Hey everybody, Thursday, October 11th, quarter to midnight. I felt like doing something a little different. I've been doing correspondence games for the last, what, 16 episodes. So this is going to be a continuation of episode 16, but I'm going to treat you, hopefully, to a live game. I know it'll be live. Hopefully, I'll win. So, I think I might be able to find some better competition on lichess.org this evening. Um, so I'm going to do a real time. I'm going to do a 15:10. We want standard. So this might go on for a while, but this is a comfortable time setting. This is a time setting I use at my weekly club. I have it 3 times a week. Is the plan? It's 2 right now. Um, Thinking about doubling up at one location, going Mondays and Wednesdays, and Tuesdays is in another town adjacent to this one. It's in the evenings for 3 hours each night. So it's taking a while to get people here, so let's try chess.com. I know I can find some people here for 15:10. See, there we go. We got one right away. On lichess.org, it's not one of the presets. Alright, I forget the name of this opening, but knight to d5 is the next move for him. Oh, okay, he's going very atypical here. This can get him into some trouble. That's very bold and aggressive. And I would say a little foolhardy, but let's see. 1084, that's not a good reflection of where I actually play. I play closer to 2000, even in a timed game like this. The ratings on chess.com are very skewed. A lot of sandbaggers are around, and they hang out in this lower section. But it is what it is. I think the bishop's better. I'd love to do the pawn, but the queen also has the rank on the d4 pawn. I mean, queen to h6 if he wants to be annoying, or I guess to g5. Like I said, that's just annoying. He does win the pawn now at e5. This is a very odd defense. You can go for the b2 pawn, which he proceeds to do. I don't really mind. I mean, yeah, we're even. My pawns are still connected, a little disjointed. I've developed a lot of my material, and he's just moved 2 pawns and a queen around. So, it's debatable as to whether or not, whether or not his efforts were in vain. Now that the queen's down in the corner of the board here on my queen side, I would like to try to trap it. It's going to probably prove to be difficult. And now the queen has sort of escaped anyway, but we'll fight on. Now I'm going to just place my knight here. It can't be attacked by any pawns now, and it's in a very annoying spot for black, so I'm hoping this might prove to be useful. And I can always defend it right away by pushing my d pawn to d4, though right now the queen has that attacked. So let's see, he castled, which castling always drops a little tempo. That's why people try to castle right after their opponent. You'll see white castle and black will castle immediately thereafter, because they take advantage of that drop in tempo to do the under tempo move that is castling. So in this instance, where I'm not really castled, but I've gotten my king over there anyway, on the kingside corner, when my opponent castled, it afforded me the opportunity to make a slightly under-tempo development move, which was that pawn to c3. Of course, I can follow it now up with d4, which was my intention. Alright, I had to take this pawn out because if he moves it to f3, he forks my bishop and my king. He'll probably capture with the rook. Now I'm going to make this push here, because that rook is sort of not doing much, and it's going to be attacked pretty quickly, I imagine, or at least I'm going to try to do something, and force him to move it back in some sort of retreating position, or retreated position, which of course drops tempo. I wish I could play music, but I have a couple of these things to music, and you can't hear the commentary when I do that. And one of them actually got taken down because of copyright infringement. Oh my. So, I'm going to start to push around his big pieces like his queen and his rook that he has developed. And in doing so, reposition my pieces in some sort of attacking fashion. See, now I can do some really wonderful things. I can bring my bishop to b5 if I want. I am thinking about moving my rook to f1 to gain control of the file. Yeah, let's do that. One good thing is my knight also has f7 targeted, so I can always bring my knight there and attack his queen, but I'd probably bring the rook to that rank. The rook to the 7th rank is strong. I'm hoping he takes it with the rook, because then I have a fork with my knight at f3. Either of them. One good thing is I always seem to keep my knights connected, or at least one move away from connecting. Knights work very well in pairs. So do the bishops, but the knights are actually quite unique, and working as a team is very deadly. They cover a wide swath of squares circling around them a few squares away. Perfect. So now, let's just double check to make sure this is going to be a good fork. I think that's a good fork. He does have an out in a way. No, he can't take the knight at d2, because my knight at f3 will just take back. He's pretty boned here. So there we go, that's pretty good. And now we can continue the annoyance. Exchanging queens is fine with me. I'm only 1 point up though, but those 2 pawns, in spite of being connected in the D and the E file for black, are prime targets. Of course, you start with the backward pawn. Backwards, excuse me. See here. Alright, I'm gonna set up a checkmate. My next plan is to move my queen to d4. If he takes the hanging bishop at e2, I have checkmate at g7. So, maybe he'll take the bait, maybe not. If he doesn't, he still needs to contend with the potential threat of mate in 1. That's a very wise move, as that knight covers the d4 square. Now this bishop won't be left as bait. Oh, very interesting. No, I'm just gonna have to come back. Very well played on Black's part to get the knight into the action. I have an idea to bring my rook to b4. What did it... Oh, I see. Trying to bring in... Oh, that's very good. Brings another attacker to f3. And this is getting complicated. I do have a slight time advantage by almost a minute and a half. Here we go. He's looking for a fork at f2. He can also get one at e3 if I move my rook to g2. Interestingly enough, I can defend. And it's also where I wanted my queen for that potential mate at g7. Now if he takes the hanging bishop, I can capture with my rook his knight at g4, then threatening mate in 1 once again. He would have a nice little check at f1 with his queen, but I could bring either my rook or my queen back to interpose. An exchange in queens is not that bad, as the knight capturing his queen at d4 after black captures white's queen will discover an attack on his pawn and his knight at g4 with my bishop at e2, which also has the rook on the g-file. Pretty much massive attacks going on. Double on pre on one piece. If you bring a defender on it, that may not help. So usually that means the piece needs to move. In most instances, when there's any sort of double attack on a piece, it really obligates or obliges the piece to the threatened piece to move. This is very true, and in practice, with a double check. Double checks force the king to move because interposition or capturing of one of the two checking pieces does not prevent the other piece from giving check. That's a very interesting idea there. I'm going to take the queen. It's interesting. Maybe not necessary, but one advantage is now he doesn't have to stack his pawns. I applaud that move. Now, if he gives check with his rook at f2, my king would retreat to h1. If his rook would then take my bishop at e2, my knight's going to take his bishop at d7. Interestingly, my rook on the b file also has his pawn at b7 targeted squarely. My time advantage extends. Now, if he were to play bishop to h3, that could prove dangerous. Though in which case, I'd probably play knight to g4. No, well, yeah, so he does do that. Okay. Now remember, my bishop's on pre. So guarding the g2 square, which was a most likely black's intended target by developing his bishop to h3. Note that my bishop at f3 is protected by the rook on the third rank. A fork with black's knight at d2 is possible, but considering that one of the pieces, my bishop in particular, is of mostly equal value in regards to material with a knight, both of which are 3 points. One problem with that fork is it brings another attacker on the pawn, my bishop, at f3, which already is being attacked by the rook, black's rook on the f-file. So knight to d2 looks like a pretty darn good move for black. However, if he does that, I plan on taking his pawn at b7. I would then threaten mate in 2 by moving my rook to b8. It's very odd. I believe he may have blundered. Oh no, look at that little checkmate. Wow, very interesting game. Well, I didn't guarantee I was going to win, but I hope you enjoyed the game nevertheless. Let's hope I win this one. I think I'm going to try castle and queenside in this game. The fact that he opened up on a kingside pawn like that makes me feel like that side's going to be vulnerable on his part. He might get to do something cheeky with queen to f3. I'm going to capture en passant. That pawn was stacked and mostly useless. Now it's actually reconnected in regards to files. However, it's far too advanced to be supported by either of the pawns on the E or the C file. Interesting. Really didn't want to do that. I wanted to bring my queen to d4, checking his king. If he interposes with the rook, I can draw his king off by checking with my bishop at h2. I'm not happy with this opening. I swear to you, I'm going to play until I get at least one win. Oh, that's a mistake. He can capture my knight with his bishop. If I capture back with my bishop, his rook can take it, because my pawn at e7 is pinned. This is proving to be very bothersome. All depends on where he moves his queen. We're actually equal on points. Oh, that was just a straight up blunder. I wasn't paying attention. Alright, let's get an entirely new opponent. I apologize for that blunder. But it goes to show you that you can make mistakes. I tell you, I see it all the time, people playing that move. It's just laughable. Now this is turning out to be interesting. I wonder how long this is. Almost 30 minutes. Castle right after him. Tommy Garcia. Interesting. That's a very annoying move. That's what I wanted. And now when he retreats to a4, I can push his knight away with pawn to a6. Once the knight moves, follow that up with pawn to b5, trapping his bishop. As easy as that. Man, that checkmate is still going through my head in that game. I have to go and look that one over. I should have looked for something. Moving the bishop rook like that was just too... It's too odd. I'm wondering if I couldn't have even defended against it. Because it was delivered with the knight. I'm going to take this exchange. 2 knights is 6 points, a rook is 5. So right there I'm up a point. Now I also win a bishop. For a pawn, that's up 2 points. So I'm up a whole proper piece. 3 points. He might push his pawn to f5. That would be quite forward. I'd respect that. Interesting. Well, I'm going to take the hanging pawn he left. Which is good, because that knight also brings the defense onto the f5 square. I'm going to leave that where it is. As long as my knight remains at e7, that shouldn't be a problem. This is proving to be a very interesting game. That's a bold check. Very respectable. This is a very open board. I like my pawns in the center there, or off-center on the D and the C file. That's not an issue. Well, I guess he didn't want to wait it out. That's a shame. I think he spelled bishop wrong. Little Philidor defense. Now when they do that, that's actually sort of out of book, but the next intended move is knight to f6. Now I do not like to play knight to c3. I'm not a fan of, I guess, is that the Italian or the Scotch? That two knight structure for white. Anyway, castling is, in my opinion, the right move, because after he plays his knight to f6 right there, I bring my rook to e1. Now I can play c3 and play like a Gioco piano. Now that's a pretty pointless move for him, unless he's going to be daring and take my pawn at f2. Oh, I see what he's going for. I'm going to play along. So now, knight takes g4 would be a blunder. I'm still going to lose that knight. Very interesting. I've never seen this before. I'm actually very glad this is being recorded. Now that pawn at g4 prevents bishop to g4 check. However, and I would not be able to play f3 because the queen now has that. But that prevents that, thankfully. That's interesting. Wow, he's gonna get checkmate with rook to h1. I have never seen this before. Very impressive game. I've never seen that. That was a first. This is quite unfortunate. I haven't won anything yet. Well, I won one on a resignation. I guess that's worth it. I want to win one proper with a checkmate. Oh, we may have an auto abort. Nope. Okay. Queen's pawn opening from a 960 rated player. Questionable. Even I don't play queen's pawn. I just play e4 or the English opening. It's my main repertoire. I like the Gioco piano. I like the Evans gambit. I like the fried liver. I like the lowly attack. I prefer the former. No, excuse me, the latter. I prefer the latter over the former. Now I want to develop my other knight to b7. As if he's already anticipating that. This will be the last game. This is just odd. I had a feeling he was going to do that. It's a very unorthodox game. I actually find it quite enjoyable. It's games like this that are interesting to me. Pretty much I'm forced to rely on my chess theory, which I hope is strong. At least strong enough. I have an idea. This guy's making it too easy. If he moves his pawn to c3, I'm gonna laugh. Excellent. Now I can play knight to f2 check, attacking his rook at h1. Actually, rook to f2 might have been better. If rook takes f2, I could have potentially followed up with queen to d2 checkmate, if his queen gets out of that area. Fortunately, I can play that now. And I'd have mate in 3. If he doesn't move to somewhere like e1 or d1. Or there. That would also foil it. Oh, he resigns anyway. I'm going to share this one. It was a very interesting game. And then I'll call it quits. Alright, take care everyone.